Today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. I played this for the first time this past Sunday, and I emphasize that because I've been told I should play it for a long time, and I feel like as a designer this is one of those like grail masterpieces of game design and of the game industry. It helped build an entire company that's one of the biggest companies today, Fantasy Flight. And so I wanted to play it. I was a little worried about the length. We had 5 players, but and usually I kind of disengage after like 3 hours of a game. But I was pretty engaged throughout this entire game. It only lasted 5 hours for us, and I think that might be partially due to some of the revisions that were apparently made in the 4th edition. I don't really know what the difference is, but I played the 4th edition. The game is jam-packed with mechanisms, so it's hard for me to pick just one, but I'm going to mention a few things that I like really quick, and then I'll talk about my favorite mechanism. One of the most elegant things that I really liked about the game is that you're not collecting resource tokens. Instead, the resources that you're using, which are, I'll probably say them incorrectly, but it's votes, essentially, and just resources, just generic resources. 2 things. And they're all noted on the different planets in the game. They're noted on the tiles on the board, the hexagonal tiles, and they're noted on the cards that you get when you take over and control a planet. So you have the card in front of you. And to show, whenever you want to spend those resources, you just flip the card over, and that's it. No collecting additional tokens, no managing that. You just have this card, you flip it over. Really, really elegant system. I really like that. I've seen that in other games too, but I wanted to highlight that. I was really intrigued by and enjoyed, for the most part, the voting on rules in this game. When you get to the middle space, the middle hex, Mechatol Rex, it unlocks a new mechanism, which is cool in itself, that you don't have this mechanism until someone gets to Mechatol Rex, which is pretty cool. And once you do that, every round, players use those votes that are on the planets that I just mentioned, and you vote on one of 2 proposals. They're read one at a time, so you don't even know what the second proposal is. You vote on the first. And I found all the ones that we encountered, I think there's a vast variety of them, but they target a certain player usually, or a certain planet, or even sometimes a certain mechanism. But there's always a target, so you can kind of see the immediate impact. And players take turns voting on whether or not they want. So like the one that came around, it might be like it's easier for this player, for a player to make technology, and you have to pick the player, a certain technology. And so you go around the table, and I might say, okay, well, I want to be better at that, so I'll vote for myself to be better at this technology. And the next player might say, well, I want to be it, or maybe I want to help this player who's been an ally of mine, or that player is weaker than the other players, or it might be something that hurts a certain player. So I was really intrigued by the element that it's so targeted, but no one really felt picked on because it's clear on the board like who has a slight advantage over the other players. You can see who's like accumulated a ton of ships, who has more points than everyone else. And you have these alliances that have formed during the game that you might want to solidify by tossing your votes in someone else's direction. Really like that. What else? The upgrading ships mechanism is really cool. It's basically you have these player mats that show the basic version of your ships, and then you take a card that's a better version of that ship and you overlay it on top of your mat. Really streamlined, really elegant. Really liked how that was done. But okay, my favorite mechanism is the action system. You have these tokens that you use to take actions on your turn. So you'll just spend a tactics token, and you can do one of several things with it. One of the things is that you can put it on a system, and it means that you can interact with that system. So maybe you're putting it on a system that you currently control, and you're producing stuff, making new stuff on that system, or you're putting it on another system to show that you want to move stuff into that system. So I really like this, that you had this token that you're actually spending, so you can see how many actions you have left. You can look around the table to see how many actions other players have left, and it's a tactile thing. The token itself means other things on the system that's also pretty cool, but I really like just the act of picking up the token, putting it somewhere to show that you've used that action. There's another type of action called strategy tokens, where they're passive actions. So often when other players do other things, there's a specific set of actions they can use this with. They might do something cool. And a secondary benefit of them doing that cool thing is that you can take a weaker version of that action if you have a strategy token available. So you have these strategy tokens that you'll just spend as like secondary actions. So I like the spending of actions, both primary and secondary, but I also like that at the beginning of every round, you only replenish 2 of them, but you get to keep any extras you already had. This is really, really cool because it gives you this feeling where you can kind of decide that maybe this turn I've done enough. Like I don't really need to do that much more. I'd rather save these tokens for the next round. And when you get those 2 back, you can decide if you want them to be strategy or tactics tokens. And so it gives you this feeling of satisfaction with your current turn, or figuring out when you're satisfied with your current turn in the current round, versus deciding, okay, I want to accumulate these things so I can have a really powerful turn in a few rounds. That's very satisfying to build up to a very powerful turn with these action tokens. So I really, really like that element of them carrying over from round to round, so you can decide when the best time is for you to use them. Those are my favorite mechanisms in this game. Kind of an epic game. Now I understand what people say when they say that this is an epic game. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have a favorite mechanism in Twilight Imperium, any edition, feel free to mention it in the comments. Or if any of these mechanisms trigger a thought of another game that has a similar mechanism that you really enjoy, I'd love to hear about that as well. Thanks.